The Still Loading podcast is brought to you by the wonderful people over on Patreon. Awesome people such as Eric H., Mr. Biscuits, Stephen P., Kevin from the Bit by Bit Foundation, and Gilmer have been wonderful enough to support the show over there. So if you would also like to support the show and get your name read at the beginning of each episode, as well as some other bonus goodies, go over to patreon.com/stillloadingpod and check out all there is to offer. On this episode of Still Loading, I got inked in the face. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this new episode of the Still Loading podcast. I'm your host, Josh Koval, and today on the show, it is episode 4 of Mario Month. Normally, Mario Month is only 4 episodes, but this March, there are 5 Sundays. So that means y'all get 5 episodes all about Mario, and this is the second to last. And this week, we are covering the second handheld version of Mario Kart. It is Mario Kart DS, and joining me to discuss this seminal title, it's actually pretty important in the history of Mario Kart, but we'll get into all that. Joining me all the way overseas from the far shores of Japan, Mono from the podcast Tokyo Game Life. Mono, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Yes, Mono from Tokyo Game Life, a Tokyo-based video game podcast about Nintendo and gaming culture in Japan's capital. I live in Japan, but I snaked my way over here to join the Still Loading podcast yet again.
Nice little touch in there with the snake comment. I like it. We'll get into all that with this. We'll get into that. Mono has been on the show before. Actually, Mono, you were on, I think the last time you were on the show, it was for Pokemon Gen 1, right?
Yes, Pokemon Red, Blue, and Yellow.
Oh my God, that was over a year ago. It's taken too long to get you back on the show, but I'm happy to have you back. And our second guest, rounding out this panel to discuss Mario Kart DS, is my good friend Jiggy from the YouTube channel Jiggylookback. Jiggy, how are you doing today?
I am doing fantastic. Happy to be here and talking about Mario Kart DS. I loved this game.
I'm assuming you're being honest, but it sounded sarcastic with that.
No, it wasn't sarcastic. I really love this game. It's great. It's a good game.
I'm excited to talk about it, man. It's funny, in prepping for Mario Month, I said at the top of, and I mean, it's funny, I feel like I say this at the beginning of every episode because my guests at this time have not been able to listen to the other episodes if they got a chance to at all. As I've said in all the other ones, I'm not a big Mario Kart fan, and I'm kind of doing this series as a way to push myself into enjoying more of it. And a little bit of a spoiler alert, I really liked Mario Kart DS. I enjoyed playing this one, and I'll use that as a segue into our personal experiences. I'll actually kick it off because mine's a little bit short. I don't have nostalgia for this game, right? I didn't grow up with it. I didn't even have a DS until like 2008 or 9. I want to say actually maybe closer to 2010, which was the tail end of the DS's like life cycle. So I didn't really have this game. I do remember playing it periodically. I remember I used to work at a deli, like this local mom and pop deli type of thing. You know, we would make sub sandwich or like hoagies. Since I'm from the Philly area, we would make hoagies. But they're submarine sandwiches. They're whatever you want to call them, subs. So I worked there, and we would make the sandwiches. We would also slice deli meat and that kind of thing. And my one coworker, Joe, brought in his DS, and in between orders, we would generally play games. And there was a few times we did Mario Kart. We would kind of pass it off, each taking turns with the races. That didn't happen very often. Most of the time, we played Age of Empires 2 on the DS, and the mini games from Mario Kart 64 DS.
Oh, yes.
Those were bangers. Those were bangers.
So there was a little bit of Mario Kart, but for the most part, it really wasn't a lot. So that was when I first kind of dabbled with it. And I'll be honest, I could be completely misremembering. Maybe we never played Mario Kart DS at the deli, but it's a DS memory. So damn it, I'm tying it into this episode. I'm going to count it.
Yeah.
More recently, though, my parents, and not by recent, I mean only a few months ago, for New Year's, my parents rented an Airbnb and, brought my wife and kid up, my brother and his wife, and but basically just my brothers and our significant others, and we all went up to an Airbnb just for 2 or 3 days, and we spent the night there. And I was prepping for this. I was prepping because I already knew back then what I was going to be covering for Mario Month this year. I mean, I even teased it on January 1st about the whole Mario Mania thing that we're in the middle of. And I remember like waiting for the countdown to midnight and just playing Mario Kart DS on my 3DS, just kind of chilling out and enjoying it. And I that's why I think I like this game. It's kind of tied with a really nice memory of spending time with my family at this Airbnb in the middle of like fucking nowhere. It was like a 3-hour drive to get to,
Mm.
or like a 2-hour drive to get to. And
And then you get that 3DS Street Pass, and you go, "What?"
oh my god! If I would have street passed anyone there, I would have been shocked. It was in the middle of like Amish country.
Did you see the thing? I don't remember. I think it was a tweet or something. It was like somebody had a 3DS in space and got a Street Pass thing.
What is that real?
I don't know if it's real. I don't know, but it was like, that's funny.
That's kind of fantastic. Honestly, so I used to actually bring my 3DS to work a lot when I would be playing like games on my lunch, and I would leave it on and put it in sleep mode. And as I would get to work, sometimes I would see I got a street pass. I'm like, oh my gosh, someone had their DS on the commute too.
Yes.
It was
Classic.
great. Man, 3DS was fucking great, but we're not here to talk about the 3DS, dude. We're here to go back to its predecessor in the Mario Kart game for it. So I want to throw it over to you guys. Jiggy, we're going to start with you. What are your personal experiences with Mario Kart DS?
Okay, so I'm just going to preface this with a similar thought that you had. I am not a big Mario Kart person.
Oh, okay.
I
I thought I
don't
was alone with this.
No, I don't dislike Mario Kart. It's just not something I like. I would never play it by myself. And it's kind of a strictly multiplayer thing. And I had it on 64. I have it on GameCube. I had it on Wii. Had it on Wii U. Had it on Switch. But like I always had it, but it's only that game that I bust out at parties, or when I have people over, or even online tournaments or something. But it was never something that I actively played by myself, as opposed to something like Diddy Kong Racing that has a first player mode. Like maybe it's because I was more drawn to first player or like one player games. I'm not sure, but there's probably something to that. But Mario Kart was just something that I didn't really latch onto. That is, except for Mario Kart DS. And Mario Kart DS, I don't think it was the first game I got on my DS, but it was one of the first few. And I think the big draw for me was the controls really, they felt simplified to me. I know they're very similar to other Mario Kart games, but it's like, this is the first Mario Kart game that I really understood drifting and drafting. And it also had online play, which was super cool. I played quite a few games online on my DS, and I'm not afraid to say that or ashamed to say that.
Well, I mean, you shouldn't be ashamed. Why? If anyone's giving you shit over playing DS online, that says more about them than it does about like I don't. We'll get into all that too, because that is a super important aspect of this game, the online play. But sorry, continue what you were saying.
Well, it's just a thing. I grew up with Nintendo consoles, and online really wasn't a thing until the Wii era, the Wii generation, and the DS was slightly before the Wii. So that was my first real experience with online gaming. And I had Mario Kart DS and Metroid Prime Hunters, and I would play those online all the time. Plus, Mario Kart DS had a few like really cool features in the game that I loved, such as being able to draw an emblem to go on your cart.
Yeah.
And that was something I really loved. I would most of the time probably be drawing like 8-bit, 16-bit looking Sonic the Hedgehog if I could, because I was obsessed with
God.
Sonic.
I was really worried you were going to say you were drawing dicks.
No, never did that. I could see why you'd think that, but no. Yeah, it's it did a lot of things right, and it also had all the characters I love with cart customization options. You could play as Rob, for crying out loud. Rob was
Hmm.
dope. I was so thrilled with that. Like, I don't know, it's like the little Easter egg, and it was so cool. And a lot of the stages in it were just incredible, which I'm sure we'll get into. And I gotta like be honest, one of the best parts for me was I could play this with my brother who had a DS or with anyone
Yeah.
who had a DS, any of my friends, and you only needed one game cartridge.
Hmm.
That is one of the most underrated things about the DS, because I remember playing Mario Party with Mario Party DS with my friends with the same
Yeah.
thing. You only needed one cartridge. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, Jiggy, but if only one person had the cartridge, didn't the players who didn't have the cartridge get forced to play as the same character? It's
The
like
yeah,
it's
the
all like
people
what is it? Who was it? Was it
Shy
like
Guy
it was
is Shy
yeah,
Guy.
you're
Yeah,
Shy
whoever doesn't have a cartridge plays a Shy Guy. But
Guy.
that was okay because Shy Guy was cool, and I believe it changed colors so they weren't all the same.
I would
So it
hope
still
so.
gave you some variety, but just the fact you could play that game without actually owning it and you could play multiplayer was so cool.
I
But
was talking to Dave on the Game Boy on the Super Circuit one, and did you know Super Circuit also could do that with the link cable?
what?
Yeah,
No, I
it
didn't.
was worse. It was worse than what the DS had by a long shot. And you were limited to only 4 tracks total as opposed to like the 40 that are available on the
Mm,
cartridge. And you could only choose between one of 4 racers. So you could choose a racer, unlike in this one, but you could only play the same 4 tracks over and over and over again. Versus here on the DS, like you said, like it's just the only real downside is you have to play a Shy Guy, which oh no.
yeah, right. It's like not a big deal. You get to play the game if you don't have it, which is super
Mhm.
cool. But yeah, that's pretty much my experience.
All right, Mono, over to you. What is your personal experience, and what are your personal experiences with this game?
Well, my Mario Kart history is that the first Mario Kart game I played was Mario Kart 64, which I really loved. And a lot of people say, "Oh, your first Mario Kart is your favorite." It's not for me, but I do understand that idea because I did love Mario Kart 64 a whole lot. And then I bought Super Circuit for GBA, which I did enjoy. And also, I rented Double Dash. I actually didn't buy it because at the time, Double Dash did get some quite negative reviews. It wasn't
Hmm.
universally loved like Mario Kart 64, for example, or even Super Circuit, which was kind of a compromise game. It does feel like you're kind of going back compared to Mario Kart 64, but a lot of people were impressed by, oh, they really put a whole Mario Kart game onto the GBA, so that got some
Hmm.
bonus points. But Double
Hmm.
Dash, there was a bit of negativity around it, and I also, maybe I'm in the minority now because I know it is kind of a cult classic, but I'm not a big Double Dash fan at all. But I did jump back into the franchise with the DS, and this is actually my first DS game. And I bought
Oh,
the special Red Hot bundle. It's a
Oh,
Nintendo DS and Mario
uh
Kart
huh.
DS bundle. And what's really unique about this bundle is that it's a red DS and it has a silver bottom. And this is actually exclusive to America. Japan did not have this.
Oh,
Actually, I showed it to my Japanese friend, and they were a bit taken aback. They were like, "What is this? I've never seen this before." But it is a weird North American exclusive DS design. And the bundle also came with some stickers and like a wrist strap that I probably never used.
who
And it was,
used the wrist trap anyway?
yes,
yeah, yeah, for real.
it was only $150, which is a great deal. You get a DS
That's really
and
not bad. Yeah.
Mario Kart DS at the same time, which is
Hmm.
quite amazing. And at the time, it's kind of sacrilegious where, oh, I'm a huge Nintendo fan. I grew up playing Nintendo games, but I didn't buy a DS at launch because a lot of people maybe don't realize it now, but the DS's launch was quite confusing about what it actually is. Nintendo used the kind of infamous phrase third pillar when
Yep.
describing the DS compared to the GameCube and the Game Boy Advance. They said, okay, suddenly there's a new hardware, but it came out only 3 years after the Game Boy Advance. And it's not like the Game Boy Advance was on the downturn, not at all. It was selling quite
No.
well. And it didn't
Hmm.
have the Game Boy name, even though it was a handheld. So I was a bit confused about, oh, is this the successor to the Game Boy, or is it something different, like the Game and Watch, for example? And they launched it with Super Mario 64 DS. which is kind of an impressive port for its time. But again, it is a port of Mario 64, so it
Hmm.
is kind of unusual in that, oh, how serious is Nintendo about this piece of hardware? Is it going to be supported as much as the GameCube or the Game Boy Advance? So I did kind of hold off on buying it in 2004 when it launched. And also my friend group, like nobody had any interest in the DS at all. So I wasn't hearing about it. It kind of flew under my radar. But then they started to announce, okay, Mario Kart DS is coming. And they announced Animal Crossing. They announced Pokemon at this time. And then I started to realize, okay, this is the next quote unquote Game Boy. So I need to buy it. And so
Mm.
I picked it up around Christmas time. I think I used my Christmas money or my Best Buy gift cards to buy it at Christmas time, the Red Hot bundle. So I got Mario Kart DS and a DS all in one. And that was my only DS I ever had. I never upgraded to DS Lite. So I had this very funky looking red DS, the
I
big
love
boy,
it.
the chunky industrial looking red DS, my entire quote unquote DS life. Japan did get a red DS, but it has a black bottom. So it is weird that, okay, Japan has a red DS with a black bottom. America has a red DS with a silver bottom, and never the two shall meet. There was no crossover. They each get
Huh.
their own special DS. And for me, going into a bit of my impressions on Mario Kart DS, for me, this was the return to greatness for Mario Kart because I loved
Mm.
64. Super Circuit was good, but it did feel like a step back compared to 64. Double
Mhm.
Dash, I wasn't a huge fan of. I just did not like the two driver design, and also the courses were not my favorite, except for the iconic Baby Park, which we'll get to later because it is in DS as well. So Mario Kart DS, it felt like a very uncompromised version of Mario Kart. It didn't feel like, okay, we've taken some adjustments to make it fit in the DS. No, it seemed even bigger than Mario Kart 64. It felt like a real sequel to Mario Kart 64, and which I really loved. And there's so many impressive elements about it. We talked about the online play, which we'll definitely get into more later because it is a really fascinating history. It's 60 frames per second. So,
Yeah.
how many games today are 60 frames per second? Not a whole lot. But Mario Kart DS, they thought, okay, it's very important that it's 60 frames. And even though it is 60 frames, the graphics look great. I was playing it earlier this morning, and I was impressed by how much it holds up visually. It has fully 3D models, which Mario Kart 64 did not have. The drivers
No.
were sprites,
Hmm.
which I didn't think about at the time. They looked 3D enough to me, but if you look at it now, they are sprites,
Yeah. Yeah.
and they're it didn't feel compromised at all on handheld. It felt like the next step in Mario Kart. So it really, really hooked me, and I really loved it at the time.
That's awesome. I love the whole build up too. Like it's funny. So I'm planning a little bit of a teaser for my listeners. I am planning on doing a DS retrospective later this year
Hmm.
because it is the 20th anniversary of the system being
Wow.
launched. Yeah. But a lot of the stuff that you said will be gone into on that episode
Hmm.
as well. The DS is such a fascinating system for a number of reasons.
Yeah. You need to
But
say
we'll
the words
obviously
third pillar as many times as possible in that episode, by the way, because that is such
I mean,
like a weird phrase.
it is, and I mean, I'll save the discussion for that episode because I'm looking forward to that whenever I do record that, whenever that one gets scheduled. But yeah, so with Mario Kart DS, this was the fifth game in the series, the fourth one obviously of this month, but fifth game overall in the series after the first one on the Super Nintendo, and I think just to kind of start it off, one of the most important aspects of it, there's two new, to me, I should say two new huge things they added to this game.
Hmm.
One we've already talked about, which is the online play, like immensely important, and we'll get into that in just a second. But I want to at least list the other thing I think is really cool and interesting that they added. It's the missions, the single player missions.
Oh yeah.
They because Mario Kart ideally is meant for multiplayer. It's meant to be
Mhm.
played with friends to get mad at each other and get cranky and talk about screen looking and all that other stuff. But I never really played Mario Kart with friends all that often, and because of that, I wonder if that's why Mario Kart games have never really like hit with me because you kind of like the fun of it is getting mad at friends, and I didn't have any friends, okay, but no,
Right?
I just couldn't even playing. even when hanging out with friends, it was just never something I sought out. But this missions thing, this is right up my alley. It's these fun little objectives that you have, like for example, the very first mission 1-1 is drive through all 5 numbered gates in order. And it's just they have the figure 8 track and you play as Mario and you drive through numbered gates and you have 35 seconds to do so. And each mission, you feature a different character, a different objective on a different course, and we'll get into that a little bit more in a moment. But I just wanted to shout the 2 things out, in my opinion, that were arguably the 2 biggest additions to the Mario Kart series. What do you guys think? Do you guys agree with that? I don't know if anyone wants to go first, but Mono, do you agree with that? Do you agree with my assessment? Those 2 things are arguably the 2 most important things, 2 most important additions.
Oh yeah, I would definitely say online play is maybe the biggest addition to the franchise in general for Mario Kart DS, and it really made it stand out. And this was actually the very first online game using Nintendo Wi-Fi connection. So it launched Nintendo, their online service at the time was called Nintendo Wi-Fi Connection, and this was the game that launched alongside it. And I can't think of a better game to launch next to it because
Yeah,
Mario
for
has
real.
mass appeal, and it did work online, believe it or not. But there were quite a lot of compromises to make it work online. For example, if you're playing solo, it's 8 players racing, but online it's only 4 players. And also, not
Mm.
all of the tracks are available. And there's some other weird things like you can't drag the banana behind you online and other things like that. But at the time, you don't really notice it because you are kind of blown away by, oh, I can play Mario Kart online and it's working. It worked, good enough for 2005 internet. And I think this is a great transition point into one of the most iconic Nintendo peripherals, the Nintendo Wi-Fi connector, aka the dongle. Do you guys know the dongle?
Yes, I remember the dongle.
Did you have one, Jiggy?
No, I did not have one, but my friend did.
Uh,
It was very entertaining.
Listeners, if you don't know what the dongle is, it is a very, I say iconic because if you're a hardcore Nintendo fan, everyone called it the dongle. And I don't know why, I don't know where the phrase came from, but everyone called it this. But it is a USB adapter that you plug into your computer because believe it or not everyone had Wi-Fi once upon a time. In
Hmm.
2005,
Hmm.
a lot of people still used wired internet. And so in order to make a Wi-Fi hotspot, you put this into your computer through the USB port, and it would make a Wi-Fi uh, hotspot for your
What?
DS to connect to.
I'll I'll be completely honest. I had no idea this existed. I was nodding and smiling along, be like, "Yeah, yeah, I know what you're
Oh
talking
man.
about." But
Oh,
when you said dongle, I'm thinking, okay, was it something that you like attached onto the DS? But I'm like, I didn't think the DS needed it, but maybe my memory was wrong. I had no idea this was you could make your own USB like
Oh yeah.
Wi-Fi hotspot
This
that
was
Nintendo marketed, and that is
yeah.
insane.
Yeah, this was a big deal at the time because yeah, like I mentioned before, not everyone had Wi-Fi, and even if you did have Wi-Fi, there would still be some issues like, oh, if your OS system is not Windows XP, it wouldn't work. Or, if your router ports are different, you couldn't connect online. So it was really like a band-aid on all these really different Wi-Fi situations. And Nintendo eventually did release like a Wi-Fi adapter, like it looks like a normal router. And that kind of, and then they phased out the connector. The connector was only sold for maybe a year and a half or so. They phased it out pretty quickly. But if you
Now,
did own it, it was quite useful. That's the way I played Mario Kart Online because even though my parents' house had Wi-Fi at the time, the connection was so bad. So I needed to like get the
yeah.
Wi-Fi connection to my computer and then reroute it via the dongle into my DS. It was so convoluted. So people, you should really be appreciative of how easy it is to connect online today.
Yeah, my friend, I seem to recall him using the dongle for his Nintendo Wii.
Yeah, you could use it for the Wii as well, but I don't think it was as powerful. They really phased it out quite quickly. But I read online that the dongle, the Nintendo Wi-Fi connector, it was maybe one of their best-selling peripherals ever. I can't really find a good source about this except for this one line on the internet. But I can believe it
Mm.
because if you didn't have Wi-Fi and you wanted to play Mario Kart online,
Yeah.
this was the only way you could do
I
it.
mean, That's also why back then they would have like the demo kiosks where you would have demo cartridges and it would broadcast from a DS for people to download because Wi-Fi wasn't a prevalent thing
Yeah.
back then. Fun fact, actually, I own one of those cartridges. I own
Oh,
one
that's
of the
cool.
the demo kiosk cartridges. They're, in all honesty, that sounds super fancy. You can find them for like $20 on eBay. There's like a vendor that sells them for 20, unless they're making like repros, which I don't know why you would, because it's not
Yeah.
like you're selling them for really high amounts of money. Uh, as a side note as well, this Wi-Fi adapter, you can still buy them from GameStop. I'm on the GameStop website, and
Really?
they have them for same day delivery for $20 for
Wow.
this. What's funny too is it has a bunch of user reviews and they're all like the newest one is from 11 years ago, so
Mm.
2023, maybe 20, maybe it'll be like 2020, or sorry, 2013, maybe 2012, depending on when the year flips over. But it's so funny, it's either all 5 stars or 1 star.
Yeah.
The never buy this item. It seems good from the description, but this thing sucks so much. I tried this on my computer, Windows 7, and it didn't work at all.
Oh.
I understood that and I can't read the full thing, but it cuts it off. I like the thing is though, if that review is from 11 years ago, right? Like I said, that's
Mhm.
2013, maybe 2012. Wi-Fi was a thing in 2012 and
Oh, yeah.
2013. There's no reason to buy that dongle in 2012 or 2013.
The prestige.
I guess so. I guess so, man. Jiggy, do you have any thoughts on the online multiplayer? Like, do you agree with what I said earlier, where like the two biggest things were the single player missions and the online multiplayer?
Yeah, I'd say so. I'd add that the third thing was the drawing your little logo or emblem on your.
Oh yeah.
I just was so obsessed with that. I don't know. I do agree though. Online definitely was like a big thing for me. I didn't even know that when I got it. I was just so impressed that I could do it, and it was so much fun. Yeah, online great, missions cool. Anything to make a single player experience in a racing game, I'm all for it.
I wish I would have experienced the online from the, and Mona, you're saying it wasn't really that bad even back then, because Nintendo is known for not really having good like good online gaming.
Right. And yeah, it is true because especially when it comes to online gaming, their feature set is really basic. I find that if you just want to connect and play online, you can do that pretty easily in a lot of Nintendo games. But if you want to do party matchmaking or, ranked leaderboards, Nintendo is still a bit behind on those aspects. But at the time for Mario Kart DS, you really just wanted to connect online and play against somebody. And if you wanted to do that, it worked. And you could also do online rooms with friends as well, which was a lot of fun. But I mostly did random matchmaking. And like I said earlier in the episode, there were some compromises in terms of, oh, you can't use every course. And yeah, some of the items were a bit changed. And also, it was only 4 players, not 8. It
Hmm.
could not fathom, having 8 players online. But it was a bit surreal, especially at the time, if you don't have people next to you to play with. Oh, I can play online multiplayer with basically by myself. I can have play with friends who are not near me, but it still has the experience of playing multiplayer Mario Kart, which at the time was really mind blowing and really amazing. And yeah, Mario Kart DS was Nintendo's first big step into the online world. Of course, GameCube had some online games as well, but if you wanted to play them, it's not quite as easy as just connecting and then you're playing it. You have to, use the modem and then connect and do all these other stuff. But for Nintendo, this was their first big shot at making an online game.
Something that was interesting about the online play with this as well, when the game was being developed, they didn't plan on having online play as being a part of it,
Hmm.
because at the time, Wi-Fi really wasn't accessible at all. But midway through development, it started becoming actually accessible to the vast majority of people, or not the vast, but more and more people, where it was commercially viable. And so about midway through development, they started testing it out. And apparently, Japan was not a fan of Wi Fi gaming because there was a possibility of harassment and whatnot. I don't. I really
Hmm.
should have cited where I got that from. It might have been from the Did You Know Gaming video on Mario Kart DS, which had a lot of really interesting stuff. Like for example, the game's working title was Mario Nitro Kart,
Hmm.
and that you can
Yep.
still see it alluded to in the one cup name with the Nitro Cup. But other than that, there's really not too much. There wasn't a whole lot that I was able to dig up, but honestly, I might have been able to find a few more interviews if I dug a little bit deeper. But just from what I found, those were some of the two more interesting ones, and just some stuff with some new items that we'll get to later on. But
Yeah,
yeah,
if I could jump in for a second, I do wanted to mention like about
yeah,
who made the game,
oh yeah, go
because
for it.
the staff role for this game is quite interesting. The producer, of course, is Hideki Kano, which is kind
Hmm.
of the quote unquote Mario Kart guy. He has a really interesting
Yep.
career at Nintendo. He actually directed SimCity for the SNES, and he
Yeah.
directed Luigi's Mansion. So Nintendo is
Cool.
really filled with a lot of people who have quite amazing and interesting resumes, because if you're employed at Nintendo, you never know, one day they'll say, okay, you're going to be a producer on this game, you're going to be a director on this game. And it's not like a straight line in terms of, oh, what you're going to do. It's oftentimes very scattered. But he's very connected to Mario Kart. And he was the director of the earlier Mario Kart games, including Super Mario Kart. And yeah, he still works at Nintendo, and he's a producer on Mario Kart 8. And the game has two directors, Makoto Wada, and he mostly works now as a writer, including on Josh. He worked on Pikmin 4. So he's still at Nintendo, and
Oh.
he's still showing off his great writing skills. But he was the director of this game, which is quite odd because normally he's a writer. But when you're working at Nintendo, you never know what your next task is going to be. And the other director was Yasuyuki Oyagi, who was the director of Double Dash, and he would later direct Mario Kart Wii. And he's also the producer on Mario Kart 8. So it definitely has a lot of star power behind it, and it is interesting to see, oh, what did these people do before, and what did they do after? And all of them are still at Nintendo, which is really impressive.
I mean, Nintendo seems to hold on to their employees for a long while. I know it's, from my understanding, you can correct me if I'm wrong, Leno, that's a lot. That's a culture. That's a very cultural thing in Japan where you kind of
Yeah,
stay with the company you get hired at for a long while. Like jumping from company to company doesn't happen all that often like it does here in the States.
true.
Um, but even with that said, like I still think back to what year was it after the Wii U launched and it was a flop. Regardless of how I think the system's pretty good, but it didn't sell well.
Hmm.
And freaking Satoru Iwata slashed his own salary so that way they wouldn't have to lay people off. And with all the stuff going on in the games industry, it's like he's been on the mind of a lot of people lately
Yeah,
with
definitely.
with that. Anyway, sorry, that was a bit of a tangent. I apologize, but I say all that to kind of emphasize why it seems like people would want to stay at Nintendo. Like they had their CEO like barely a decade ago cut his own salary so that way no one would have to lose their job. It just, I don't know. I don't know what it's like to work in Japan. I don't know what the corporate culture is, but I would have to imagine that like Nintendo must be at least a decent place to work comparatively to other companies.
Yeah, they don't have a
Hmm.
lot of turnover, so that's why you see people who worked on Mario Kart DS, which is almost a 20-year-old game. They're still at Nintendo. They're still working on Mario Kart. Every now and then they'll write for Pikmin 4. You never know.
It's wild.
It's pretty awesome.
Let's move on to we can talk about the missions here, and then we'll get into some of our favorite tracks and whatnot. Um, the missions, like I mentioned before, was just this really cool addition of the single player challenges for you to do, and they'd be of varying difficulty and varying levels, but then they would also have like bosses. So like there would be, like I mentioned, the first one is
Yeah.
you drive through all
Yeah.
numbered like five numbered gates, but as you go through all of level one, there's mission 1-1, mission 1-2, and once you beat all 8 missions, then there's a boss mission where you're just driving your cart into one of the big bullies to knock him off the stage, and it's in an arena. And so they have these bosses as you go through it. I was enjoying these a lot when I was on my at the New Year's thing I was mentioning before. I think I beat the first boss and then I turned it off. I was like, or I switched over to something else. I'm like, I will keep playing these. I need to play more of the game instead of just focusing on just this, because there's a lot of missions. There are 7 levels total, 8 missions per level, so 7 times 8. That alone, that you're looking at what 60 minus 7, hold on, it's like
8 times 7?
56. It's like 56 different levels plus or 56 different missions plus an extra boss mission for those 7 levels. So you're looking at like 63 total like missions slash levels in this, or missions, I guess, for overall. Like that's a lot of
Yeah.
content.
It is crazy how much content is packed into this little cartridge. All those missions, all the carts, all the characters. It's insane.
It really is. And the fact that also they made this Mario Kart so much more customizable. Like the thing you mentioned before, Jiggy, and I know I was kind of glossing over, but I don't think it should be glossed over. And I'm kind of criticizing myself there, but like the customization of the carts, like not just being able to draw on your carts, but each character had like tons of variety of different carts you could control. Like just looking even on the wiki right now, right? Like there is signature carts, there are standard carts, and Mario would have the B Dasher. Luigi had Poltergust 4000, a great send up of Luigi's Mansion. Peach had the Royale. I'm actually personally a huge fan of where are you at? Freaking who had it? Someone just had a fucking tank.
That's Dry Bones.
Yeah,
Dry
Dry Bones.
Bones. Yep.
Oh, and that's with the unlockable signature cards. Yeah. Dry Bones
Yeah.
just has a tank.
That was dope.
Rob had Rob legs. That's kind of awesome. Waluigi has a zipper. Like there were so many cool things.
Yeah.
There's so much customizable stuff. I want to throw it over to you, Jiggy. What are some carts that stood out to you? What are some of your favorite aspects of the customizability? Customizability, is that a word? Of the customizable,
Sure.
whatever the fuck. I don't know anymore. What stuck out to you about how customizable this game was?
Okay. Well, first off, I just love the roster. Okay, because it not only had the main Mario cast, but it also had Dry Bones, Rob. Like those are 2 that I never would have expected, and I really particularly like Dry Bones, because he had a tank. I totally agree. That was so dope. I
It's so
loved
insane.
that, and it handled really well. I also really loved. I would play as Wario, and I would use so. At the time that I was playing Mario Kart DS, Smash Bros. Brawl was a thing that you had the Wario trailer where he was announced as a character and he comes riding in on his motorcycle. And so I could actually take Wario and play on Waluigi's. He had like a trike, and I would ride the trike, and I would oh, it's just like the Smash Bros. Trailer. Like there was some connection that I was making that I was like, it felt special to me. And I also really liked Rob's Gyromite cart. I just thought that was so cool.
What a
That
cool
was so
callback too, of like
Yeah.
what he's known for. Sorry, one thing I wanted to bring up before you continue. Dry Bones was originally not going to be in the game. It was going to be Professor Egad.
Oh,
that'd be cool too.
Yeah, there's actually a model of Professor Egad in the code. I want to say, or maybe not. Maybe not. But either way, Egad was supposed to be in there, and it was later replaced with Dry Bones. Which I don't know if I think I think Egad would have been more fitting, but Dry Bones is still. I mean, Dry Bones got a tank. You wouldn't have had a tank if you got Professor
True.
Egad. So I'm sorry, Dry Bones wins.
I like both, but Luigi already has like a Poltergust inspired cart, so Luigi's Mansion is already kind of represented. So let's give Dry Bones a bone. Let's throw him a bone.
Yeah, throw him a bone. I also liked Donkey Kong could actually his cart was Rambi the Rhino. That was pretty dope. I don't remember liking it though. I remember those heavy characters. I like the heavy characters themselves, but them and their carts was well, I'm gonna lose, so I've never used that. I always had to have good handling. Or you switch to their standard cart. Sometimes their standard cart was better, you know, which I'm okay with standard carts. They look like normal carts, but they work.
I don't know. Waluigi can drive a freaking, like, what is that? It's a construction. It's called the Gold.
Yeah, it's
What would that be called?
Like a
What that
construction
Japanese
crane
thing
or
is?
something.
Yeah, it's like a
yeah,
crane digger thing.
crane digger. That's it.
What characters did you guys race as the most? Mono, start off with you. What characters did you race? Like, who is your go-to Mario Kart character?
My go-to was definitely Yoshi, just because I liked Yoshi. I really didn't think about the stats a whole lot until Mario Kart Wii. That's when I really got into the nitty-gritty about, okay, this person has this handling and this car can affect it this much. Before that, I just picked Yoshi because I liked Yoshi. Uh, so I'm pretty sure I just played as him maybe 99% of the time. I think maybe I tried the other characters, but I wouldn't be surprised if there are some characters in Mario Kart DS I just never touched because I'm such a Yoshi main. And I liked his egg cart.
Mm-hmm.
And also Yoshi has good handling. So, if you are afraid of slipping and sliding or crashing into things, he's a great character for beginners or just people who aren't very good at the game like myself. But I did try Rob as well. I'm not a real big fan of Rob, just because we'll get to it later when we talk about staking and whatnot. But
Mm-hmm.
he always just destroyed me online, so I always had a disdain for Rob. And also in Smash Brothers, anytime I'm not good at playing as Rob in Smash Brothers, and also anytime I play against a Rob player online, they just destroy me. So anytime I see Rob, I just know I'm in for some pain. So I try to avoid him. But he does have a lot of really clever carts, and he is a very strange addition to Mario Kart DS. He is sort of the first non-Mario character added
Mm-hmm.
into Mario Kart. And it's odd that they didn't bring him back, to my knowledge. Maybe he shows up in 7 or something, but he's not in 8, even though 8 has Link and the Animal Crossing characters. So it is
Mm-hmm.
like a very
Yeah.
weird appearance of Rob.
I'm trying to see if I can find any like other appearances of him, but yeah, that's really funny actually. Um, it's funny looking at the stats too. You mentioned before you didn't pay too much attention to them until like Mario Kart Wii. Rob's stats, he's got pretty low stats overall for like his, let me double check, acceleration, weight, handling, drift, and even items isn't like the items is the same for everyone. His handling's not bad. It's at 65 out of 100, but his top speed is listed at 9. His speed is listed as 96,
Hmm.
which is the highest top speed, like the highest speed next to
Mm.
Bowser. But Bowser's acceleration is only a 30 and Rob's is a 53. So like it's a huge difference. And I was looking at some of the other ones, just curious, like who's good at what. Peach has some of the lowest stats, but she has the highest drift at 97.
Ooh.
Whoa.
She can just, and this is all with the standard carts, by the way. There are obviously when you get the different carts, or when you get other carts, they have different stats and whatnot. Now I'm curious, what's Peach's stats? She has a 94 drift with her Royale, but her speed and I think her speed's a little bit. Oh, actually, her speed's even lower on the Royale. Why would anyone go with this? This is just weird. Her acceleration is worse as well. Like everything about the Royale is worse. I don't why is everyone's stats worse? Oh no, Rob's stats. He has 100 in speed on his signature with the Gyromite
Hmm.
car, but everything else is abysmal. It's so
Yeah.
weird.
Man, I don't know. I always loved it was funny, like I hit a core memory with that Dry Bones riding the tank. I was like, it handled so well. I made that comment and then I'm looking at the handling stat, it's 100. So I'm like,
Yeah.
yes, it did. It did handle very well.
It also had 100 in acceleration, but its speed was only 34.
Ooh.
Yeah. It doesn't matter when you're drifting the whole time.
Exactly.
That's true. That's very true. Let's move on over to courses now, though. Unless you guys, is there anything else you want to touch on, either Mona or Jiggy? Are there any things you want to touch on with the racers or anything that we've discussed up to this point?
Jiggy, what emblem did you make for your cart?
I'm I'm pretty sure I had a Sonic the Hedgehog face.
Okay.
I was pretty obsessed with drawing Sonic the Hedgehog, especially like trying to figure out like 8-bit, 16-bit like pixel art. So I would try to recreate those. So that was the majority of emblems that I made.
Yeah.
Different attempts.
A lot of people had their own spin on pixel art. I had a Triforce, so
Oh,
that shows how
dope.
creative I am. I just made a big triangle, but yeah, you would definitely see a lot of Triforces online, and a lot of pixel art, a lot of like Pokemon. I didn't run into a whole lot of quote unquote offensive material, to be honest, but yeah, definitely a lot of pixel art from other video games.
What a polite way to say that. Just say what I said earlier. I see. I didn't even know that you could customize your cart when I was experimenting with this. When I was, it was a video I was watching later, just trying to, because I'll watch some other YouTube videos and whatnot on games that like these types of games, just because they do a good job of like rounding out some of the features on it. So it was really interesting to see all the different things that this had. And honestly, I think it's something that we mentioned at the top of this episode, just how crammed full of content this game is, between
Mm.
all the different missions, between all the different racers and the customizability, and even with the tracks. While there aren't as many tracks as in Mario Kart Super Circuit, which honestly I think is a good thing, because we joked around on it on the Super Circuit episode. There in the retro Grand Prix, there are 4 different Bowser's Castle levels. um
Yeah.
they're different courses, but they're all the same theme. And then if you go to the original game, where they have like the new courses, there's 3 different Bowser Cats. There's like 7 Bowser Castle tracks in, in Super Circuit. We had a lot of fun joking around about that. And this one, there's a lot more variety.
Oh,
um
hands down.
First thing I thought was cool with the Retro Grand Prix, each cup has one cart, or one course, excuse me, from each era of the previous game. So you have a Super Nintendo, you have an original Mario Kart, you have a Mario Kart 64 track, you have a Super Circuit track, and you have a Double Dash track. And they there's just, each cup has just one from each era of Mario Kart, which is really cool. It kind of creates this really nice rounded experience of Mario Kart in general. So you'll get 16 new tracks, 4 cups once again: the Mushroom Cup, the Flower Cup, the Star Cup, and the Special Cup. And 16 new tracks, and then 16 old ones. And because of the 16 old ones, it and the way they kind of space it out, where it's not 4 fucking Bowser Castle tracks in the retro section, it's this really nice like mix of old and new. And it's a really nice like variety of all the old courses. But I want to throw it over to you guys too. Like, what are some of your favorite courses in this game, old or new? I mean, well, actually, we'll stick with the new. We'll stick with stuff that's brand new to this. Jicky, I want to start off with you. Like, what are some of the courses that you still enjoy to play to this day?
Okay, 2 immediately stand out of my mind with a close third, I'd say. Okay, so 3 technically stand out of my mind. One is Yoshi Falls. That
Mm-hmm.
one just sticks in my brain, like I can remember it. Every time I think of Mario Kart DS, I think of Yoshi Falls. I don't know what it is about that course, just the simplicity, but it's pretty too. I don't know. It's just, I always remember it. I always think of it. Another one is Luigi's Mansion. I
Mm-hmm.
love that one. I love the trees walking out in the pathway. I love the ghosts like fading in and out. I just, everything about that. I love Luigi's Mansion. I love horror themed things. So that course is another one that sticks out. Um, and actually, Waluigi's Pinball.
Oh yeah.
That is an iconic Mario Kart
Yeah.
course, and it's it's reoccurring in Mario Kart games for a reason. It was such a good one. I loved getting the little speed up wheel that would go up,
Mm-hmm.
and you just hit it just right, and you get a little speed boost. It's like, yeah, that's it. That's it. I'm doing good.
I
Get
was
get your opponents to get hit by the big pinball.
yep.
Suck
Oh,
it.
I was watching a long play of the game, just to kind of, I played this when I was prepping for the episode. I played it a month or two ago. A little behind the scenes, we've been trying to get this episode scheduled, not specific, like just in general, we're trying to get different guests for this for like months, and I'm so happy this all worked out for this one. But because of that, I played when I played the preparation for this game like 2 months ago at the time, or like a month and a half
Mm.
ago. So I was watching a video to get refreshed, and the pinball and Waluigi pinball at the end of the race, like the final lap, it is just flying across the screen at like lightning speed. I don't know if that's the same with like every single one. Like, maybe it just every time you're on that racetrack or on that course, excuse me, the final lap is just pure chaos. But it was really amusing just to see they're racing as Mario, and they're just driving down, and they get to that section where it's a little bit open with all the bumpers and everything, and you just see this ball fly across the screen. I'm like, holy shit, someone's gonna die.
It's awesome. Just
Oh my
awesome.
gosh.
Hmm.
Mona, what about you though? I don't want to keep hogging the mic here. What are some of your favorite courses?
Yeah, like you mentioned, the game has 32 courses, which is quite a lot. Mario Kart 8, the Wii U version, it launched with 32 courses. So not a whole lot changed for a long time. So this one was really packed with content. And yeah, for me, my favorite course in terms of the new courses, number one, of course, is Waluigi Pinball. That is such just a unique stage. The way that
Mm-hmm.
it immediately starts by you shooting out of the cannon is great. It really gets you excited for the course, and it has fantastic music, incredible aesthetic, like this very bright neon lights that you really don't see in other courses, and of course the pinball obstacles that again are really singular and unique to the stage. You don't really see, there's no other stage where there's a giant balls bouncing around or bumpers
Mm-hmm.
that you can hit into. So Waluigi's Pinball, it really even stands out today as something very special and unique. I also picked a TikTok clock, which has
Hmm.
a cool mechanic of it spins the like a lot of the platforms are circular, and sometimes they spin to the left, sometimes they spin to the right. So you need to be aware of where you land and which way it's spinning. And it also has a really great clock aesthetic. You're inside a big clock. Also, I love Cheap Cheap Beach, which is a pretty normal looking beach level, but it has a lot of shortcuts, a lot of fun things like going under the water. And the end part is really intense because that's when a lot of people really rush and try to, get an advantage because there's a lot of turns at the end. So it's very easy. If you mess up once, you could just be knocked out of the race. But at the end, there's a very short straightaway with some ramps. And then that's when you really make your last push and try to knock everyone out or try to get a little bit of boost at the end. So those are
Mm-hmm.
my three favorites. And for four, I did put Wario Stadium, which is like a fun dirt bike uh, style of stage.
Yeah.
But yeah, a lot of great new courses in Mario Kart DS.
I'm gonna borrow a point, and of course give credit, but I'm gonna borrow a point from Scott Lawaz's video on this game. And I think what this game does that's really cool is that they do a great job of bringing in elements of non Mario Kart games and creating tracks out of them. So Jiggy, you mentioned the Luigi's Mansion. Obviously, that is Luigi's Mansion. They just took the game, or like, hey, let's make a course inspired from this Mario game. Tick-Tock Clock, that's Mario 64. Airship Fortress, that's like the airship levels from Super Mario Bros. 3. Obviously Bowser's Castle from all the different castles, but then Delfino Square, Super Mario Sunshine. Like,
Hmm.
it's cool to see this as almost as like an homage, like a tribute to the history of Mario
Hmm.
by seeing all different aspects of the games. I mean, hell, Jiggy, you mentioned Yoshi Falls. It's a tribute to Yoshi. It may, I don't know, does it have Yoshi's Island vibes? Does it have like Yoshi's Island music at all in that?
Mm, I don't remember if it has Yoshi Island music. It does have kind of a Yoshi's Island vibe to it.
And then DK Pass is Donkey Kong, obviously. That's not necessarily based off of a specific game per se, but it's Donkey Kong, which is in the history of Mario. I do think it's funny, though. One of the jokes Scott kept making in the video was he kept knocking Shroom Ridge. I don't hate that level. I kind of like it. I
It's
remember
fine.
when I was playing it. I had a good time with it. I guess it's nothing like amazing, but it's good enough. I enjoyed it. Um, in terms of the retro levels, it's always cool just to see everything from the previous games, of course. Um, I got it since you're not on the Double Dash episode, and actually at the time of recording this, the Double Dash episode has not been recorded. But Mono, I got to ask you, what do you like about Baby Park?
It's just so simple, and it's such a great idea because it's very different from all the other Mario Kart courses because it's not 3 laps, it's 8 laps.
Mm-hmm.
And there's no crazy obstacles, there's no crazy turns. It's really just a circle. Not exactly a circle, but like a rounded rectangle, for example. And so you've got a lot of straightaways. And that's when you can really start boosting. That's when you can take advantage of the slipstream and all this other stuff. And when there are turns, you really need to nail it because if you miss it, if you mess it up, people will take advantage and get way ahead of you. So it's just so funny because you can lap people very easily if you're doing great
Mm-hmm.
and someone's doing poorly, which you can't really say for other courses. And it's so basic, but it's so unique. So I think the idea of let's take the most basic race course possible and put it into this really wild racing game that is very fast and has a lot of items and other weird stuff that always pops up. Let's just take it back to basics and let's see how people do. Let's see how it fits. And it just fits so perfectly. It's really intense. I always say that if you want to see who is the best at Mario Kart, go on Baby Park and that'll decide. Because there's no obstacles that jump out of nowhere. There's no
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, this turn is unfair. It's as fair can be. So I really love Baby Park, even though I'm not a huge Double Dash fan. So I'm always happy when Baby Park shows up in DS, and yet they brought it back for Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, the booster course passes. And something I don't know if you mentioned this, maybe I forgot, but this is the first Mario Kart game that has retro courses. Before that, no Mario Kart game had it. So DS, you mentioned the online play and the mission mode, which is unique to DS. I would say maybe number 3 in terms of important additions to the series are the retro courses, because it kind of doubles the courses, and also it brings back a lot of the old classics, but kind of reimagines them in a new way as well. And it's cool to see a lot of the Super Nintendo courses in 3D for the first time. It's kind of fun to see how they adapt these very flat courses, the Mode 7 courses, into 3D. Some other retro ones I love, Choco Mountain from Mario Kart 64, and also Moo Moo
Mm-hmm.
Farm are two of my other favorites.
I'm,
Oh, Moo Farm.
I
I
think the
mean,
Wii Moo Moo Farm is much better, but the N64 Moo Moo Farm is pretty good too.
I'm pretty sure I gotta double check this, but I'm pretty sure this is not the first game that did repeat track because I think like in the Game Boy Advance one they had they redid Mario Circuit
Are is it
in
in the normal cups though? Is or are there like a special retro cups? Maybe I
it's
might be
special.
meaning.
It's extra tracks. It's special. So they have Pete in the main tracks or the main courses in Super Circuit. You have Peach Circuit, Shy Guy Beach, Riverside Park, Bowser Castle One. There's like I said, there's a bunch of Bowser Castles. But then when you go to the extra tracks in the extra Mushroom Cup, they have Mario Circuit. They have Donut Plains, which is just a repeat of the original Mario Kart.
Oh, okay, I
Um,
see. These are the extra tracks are from Super Mario Kart.
Yeah,
Okay,
and
so technically, yeah.
there's also like 2D versions of some of like because isn't Choco that I'm thinking something different. There's Choco Mountain and there's Choco Island in there's Choco Mountain on N64 and there's Choco Island in I think the original I don't remember
Yeah,
anymore,
and
but yeah,
SNES.
yeah,
Yeah.
Super Nintendo and they redid it for this. So they do have they redid some of the old ones, but they haven't. This one, I think, to kind of give lend credit to what your point is, Mono. This is the first one that incorporates from everything. It's not just like one or two things. This incorporates from literally like everything up to this point. Honestly, it's a little bit like what Mario Kart 8 is now, like prior, but
Oh
with
yeah,
just less tracks. Um,
yeah. The Retro Grand Prix is what the retro courses are called. So from DS, they've had this quote unquote retro Grand Prix. But yeah, Super Circuit did have the Super Mario Kart courses. So that is technically they did have retro courses first. But I guess in terms of this concept of they're retro cups and they're all mixed up. Mario Kart DS kind of started that.
mhm. Um,
Mm.
Now I want to move on to items, to the items, because there are new items in this game that were not in previous games. Not a ton, but there are new items in this game that were not previously, like I mentioned. Notably, I believe the Bullet Bill this is the first time Bullet Bill appears in the series. They had the Chain Chomp in Double Dash, but that was Bullet Bill first appears, I want to say, in this game, and then Blooper. Hence the I got ink on my face in the intro. The Blooper famously as well was not, like, the Nintendo staff were not happy with this. They hated this item.
Oh,
So they still included it, but apparently the staff were not fans of it. I believe this is also the first game to deploy triple bananas. I
yeah, it
don't know
is.
if that's true. Okay, triple bananas. So yeah, they added the blooper, they added triple bananas, and they added Bullet Bill. At least from my understanding. I do you guys agree with the Nintendo staff? Does blooper suck?
I mean, it's
Yeah.
annoying to get blooped, I guess.
To
I
get blooped.
Well, if you hit a boost, right, it just totally goes away.
Yeah.
So it was never a problem for me. So if I got that as an item, I would have been like, crap. It's not helpful.
Yeah, I'm trying to think out of all the Mario Kart games and races I've played since Mario Kart DS, there were maybe twice where the blooper actually impaired me. Other times, you can kind of know where you're going. You can see it pretty
Yeah.
clearly. So yeah, and compared to other items that have, really wrecked me, the blooper is not as intimidating. And yeah, when you get it, you just kind of hope that, oh, maybe there's some sort of psychological damage you can inflict. But otherwise, it's not as effective. But it is a cool idea. And kind of like a fourth wall breaking idea where, oh, the screen is now messed up.
Yeah, I like to think the evolution of the blooper is how in Smash Bros. They added the Nintendogs and they
Yeah.
pop up on the screen and shake the screen. I'm like, slightly more effective than a blooper.
I hate the Nintendogs in Brawl. I hate it so much. Did either of you play Nintendogs? It's never a game
Yes.
series that I had any interest in, but I've always been curious about.
I had a little schnauzer and his name was Bakey and he could catch a mean frisbee.
Man, the DS. I'm going to talk about it in more detail on the DS episode, but it's one of those systems where I owned it technically while it was still contemporary, but didn't truly enjoy it until until within like the last 5 to 6 years, which is really, really heartbreaking. But anyway,
I gotta say that this game, and like since we're talking about the items, this game implements the DS as a whole, every aspect of the hardware in such unique ways. I love it. Because like for me, having a touchscreen, I disliked having a touchscreen because most games would use it and be like, oh, touchscreen controls. I'd be like, I hate touchscreen controls. They're awful.
Yep.
Even as a kid, I was like, this is stupid. I'd rather just hit the buttons. But Mario Kart DS uses it as the map. And it gives you the ability to see behind you. So like if you have a green shell or something, you could like look on the map and see, oh, something's coming up. And you could actually like aim backwards and launch the shell, right?
Mm-hmm.
So utilizing that for items was awesome. Plus, you could also see things. Correct me if I'm wrong. You could see banana peels and stuff on the actual map too.
You can also see which people have which items.
It was nice.
Yeah, we really didn't touch on the dual screen element of Mario Kart DS, which most of the time you're kind of honed in on your racer, so you don't really look down there so often. But there is a lot of cool information down there in terms of, okay, where is this character? What's going on? What like items do they have? So yeah, I do wonder like what's the percentage of people looking at the bottom screen during an average race? It has to be maybe under 1%, but it is quite useful if you do look at it.
Yeah, it's kind of one of those things. It's helpful to get just quick information really fast. If you're driving, just glance down really fast. But I just loved it. And once we talk about the battle mode, it utilized a really cool feature of the DS that otherwise really wasn't used that much. So we talk about that. I have something to say.
Well, go ahead and go into it.
Okay, fine. The microphone.
Oh yeah.
So in the battle modes for the DS, for Mario Kart, you get the balloons behind you, And on the DS version, you actually blew into the microphone to make the balloons inflate. So you get extra balloons and you blow into the microphone and it would inflate the balloons. And that was so cool. Like what a clever use of just peaking your microphone. But it was amazing.
I love some of those goofy gimmicks that, as long as they're done well. I still, though, will never forgive Phantom Hourglass, the Zelda game Phantom Hourglass, because there's a section in it where if you want to get a good deal at the store, it says you have to make a loud noise. You have to cheer for a sale. And I'm like, when I was playing this, I was in an airplane traveling, and I'm like, what the fuck do they want me to do? So I'm like, well, I can't yell. So at first I tried going like, yay, yeah, like really close. Like I went right up to the microphone and just like, yay. And that didn't work. So then I was like, well, you know how like if you bump a microphone, it makes a really loud noise. So I put my finger over top of it and I just rubbed it back and forth really fast. Just
Did it work?
It worked. I got a really good deal. And
you'd be like in the seat on the airplane or whatever. It's like, hi, and then everyone kind of looks, and there's that one guy. He's like, hey, he's just playing Zelda on his DS like my son.
That's what the kids are calling it nowadays. Well, it's the reason I'll never forgive that game, though, is not because of that specific scenario. After you do that and you get the good deal, the shop owner is like, I sure hope you didn't yell into the microphone. You could have just blown into it. You would have looked really silly if you were yelling. And I'm like, you son of a bitch. You you knew what people were going to do, and then just to mock them. Like, thank God I was on an airplane. Otherwise, I guarantee you I would have been in my house just yelling into my DS. Oh my gosh. But that's cool that they had it for the battle mode with this. And I never really dabbled with battle mode in general with the Mario Kart games. Do either of you have any memories of it with this? Or you can even talk about Mario. Oh, go ahead, Jiggy. And then Mono, if you have any, we'll throw it over to you after Jiggy's done.
Battle mode was something I always loved to do with my cousin. And we would get together and we play battle mode. And this one was particularly awesome because the battle mode, you could actually play on a giant DS.
Yeah.
Like that was a stage. And that was so cool. I don't know. There's something just meta about it, right?
Mm-hmm.
But even besides that, there were slightly different modes. What was it? Shine?
There's Shine Getters? Is that what it's called?
Yeah, Shine Getter.
Mode. Sorry, yeah.
Shine Runners.
Okay, that's it.
Yeah. So you had to gather the shine sprites and avoid being hit. And it was fun. It was just an alternative way to play battle mode. And I just loved it. I love battle mode. That's something I even played on Mario Kart 64. The battle mode for me was that was a fun multiplayer experience that really just changed the fundamentals of Mario Kart. It wasn't about speed. It was about being strategic with items, and honestly, it gave me an excuse to be like Donkey Kong or Bowser and just kind of ram into people. It was awesome.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was also a big fan of the battle mode, especially the Nintendo DS course. That was one of my favorites because you're on a Nintendo DS, so it's very surreal, and you're in this black void. But it is kind of a fun course because the top part is a little bit elevated, and I'm also a big fan of Block Fort, which came from the N64 game, and I played a ton of the N64 version, and to have it on my DS on the go, I could pick up and play Block Fort at any time. Was awesome. I really loved the battle mode in this game. And yeah, you mentioned earlier that you did have to blow into the balloon. It's fun because I think in the past games, you started with 3 balloons. And in Mario Kart DS, you start with 1, but if you want more, I think you can have up to 5 even. You need to blow into it. So when you first start a race or a battle, you do need to take a moment where you think, okay, should I just attack now and see if I can get them, like KO them very easily with 1 balloon, or should I like go and hide and blow up some balloons? It is a fun little strategy element.
It's kind of like Dragon Ball Z, where you kind of just have, if you're playing with your friends or your cousins like I was, you have a complimentary period where everyone just kind of is like rather than screaming and powering up, you're blowing and
I'm just
inflating your
picturing
balloons. It's
I'm
like,
just picturing a group of friends, you know, like say they're college age back in 2000. I guess we didn't even say what year this game came out in. Back in 2005 when this game came out, November 14th, 2005, specifically is the North American release date. I could just imagine a whole bunch of college kids and like high school kids, like, you know, new Mario Kart comes out, so they all get a bunch of DSs and they're all gathered around it. And someone walks in and you just see, he goes, just be the whole
yeah.
the room, just you just hear a collective blow. That sounded
The
awkward.
only thing about it is if you were like, which often I was, if you were eating food or drinking at the same
Oh
time,
god.
and then like you lose your balloons and you got to quickly inflate, you're like, oh no, you're like,
There's like pretzel chunks all
like
over your DS.
shooting, spraying your drink all over the screen. You know, you're kind of, oh boy. But in some ways, it made it more intense.
I like you said, Mono, you strategize. Do you go for an attack while you're weakest, or do you take time and blow up those balloons?
Yeah, it's an interesting element that hasn't really appeared in the other battle courses.
Do you have any battle mode memories, Mono?
Yeah, just mostly because you can play against the computers. So I did a lot of versus CPU for the battle mode. So yeah, the DS course and the Block Fort, those were the two courses where I really focused on. There's some other cool ones, like I think there is a Luigi's Mansion themed one as well, but I mostly stuck with the Nintendo DS and Block Fort battle courses.
Yeah, there was a Twilight House, which is kind of like Luigi's Mansion. There is also Palm Shore, Tart Top, Block Fort, like you mentioned, and Pipe Plaza.
Oh, I remember Pipe Plaza because you could go through one pipe, come out another pipe, and that was pretty intense.
That's pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty cool. I don't have much else to add to this. I do. If you guys don't have anything else to say on any of the stuff we've talked about so far, I wanted to wrap up with just the overall aesthetics of this game. You know, the look, the visuals, the colors, the music, like and sound effects and everything is. I really, as with all Mario Kart games, I like the music. I actually really like the intro music specifically. Just for the title screen, it puts you in a really happy mood. Like I did the same thing with Super Circuit, but I don't know. I listened to Super Circuit somewhat recently because I've been editing the episode. You know, at the time we're recording this, I've been editing the Super Circuit episode, and you know, I listened to that for the intro to Super Circuit, but like listening to this, I actually kind of like it a little bit more, I think.
Yeah, it has a really great soundtrack. The song that really sticks in my brain is, of course, Waluigi's Pinball. That's just a really iconic Mario Kart song. But overall, the soundtrack is quite good and definitely a step up in terms of the hardware that's in the DS can produce a lot of better sounds than the GBA, for example.
Absolutely. Yep. It's good. I had the same thought when I kind of re-familiarized myself with it and played the initial intro. I was like, oh yes. Oh. It's good. It's just good.
I also really like the visuals of this game a lot. Like what is it? Super Circuit had all the, I mean, I know it's a 2D sprite, everything was a little bit muted, but I guess a better comparable to for this game would be Mario Kart 64, just because that's the closest in terms of, you know, graphical fidelity and everything. And I like you mentioned it before, Mono, how this game is full 3D characters, no 2D sprites. Like I'm consistently impressed by how good this game looks considering its age and the system that it's on. Like the DS did not, like, it could do 3D, but it wasn't like anything like groundbreaking. I'm impressed with how this looks. Like like playing it, it didn't feel aged at all. I don't know. I really enjoyed the visuals of this.
Yeah, I agree. I played it, just a few hours ago, and I was quite impressed by how great it looks, especially on the 3DS screen. And there's fully 3D models, and good textures. It doesn't look like like I said many times, it doesn't look like it was compromised at all. It's 60 FPS. the graphics are really good, has an excellent art style, a lot of cool tracks that look amazing. So it's definitely, I would maybe even say one of the more impressive DS games in general, even though it launched so early in the hardware's lifespan. But there's not a whole lot of other games that look this nice.
Yeah, and I mentioned this before, but like the whole I said it was easier for me to understand drifting and drafting, and I think part of that is actually due to the visuals. The actual visuals for drifting and drafting are so obvious
Mm,
as opposed to Mario
Hmm.
64. Like if so when you're drifting in Mario Kart 64, you're turning and you get kind of the little smoke that comes out the back, just slightly different colors. It's like little circles almost. Whereas this one, you get the flames around your wheels and you're turning and it turns from blue to red. And you know, red means you fully did it and you get the best speed boost possible. And drafting, you see the little wind in front of you
Hmm.
and
yeah.
then boom, all of a sudden you're speeding up. Like those obvious visual cues were what I needed to really understand those mechanics. You know, like I may have understood it slightly on the 64 just by feeling it, but I really solidified the gameplay mechanic in this game particularly.
It is a they do a good job of communicating like visually all the like the mechanics in this game. Like I in the Mario Kart games I've played up until this point for the series, I could never get the drifting right. Like I could never get the boost, and it was partially because I didn't know how long I had to hold it. I didn't know like how long you had to be drifting in order to get the boost. And this one, it was so obvious like that I don't think it can be. I think it's low key super important that they added that little visual element to it because it communicates a lot more to the player what's going on than anything prior. So props to them. I think I think and especially on
Mm-hmm.
like a small screen, I think they kind of needed to do that because when you're playing, Mario Kart 64 or Double Dash, you're playing on a big TV theoretically, however big your tube TV was back then. But in the DS, it's a tiny screen, so you need something brighter, something a little bit more eye popping in order to communicate what needs to be communicated with the visuals. So smart design on that
Mm-hmm.
from them in general. Um, I, do you guys have any final thoughts on the aesthetics? Otherwise, I feel like this is a good time to go into final thoughts.
Just I like them. I like the aesthetics. I like them.
I like them. They're
They're
pretty.
good.
They make me
They're
feel
good.
happy. Well, let's dive into final thoughts then. Let's wrap this episode up, shall we? So, I want to start off with you, Mona. We'll throw it over to you. What are your final thoughts on Mario Kart DS? Like, where do you think this holds up in the pantheon of Mario Kart games? Is it like where do you rank it, and just your overall thoughts?
At the time, it was definitely my favorite Mario Kart game. It's then been topped by Wii and, of course, 8 Deluxe, but it's very hard to
Hmm.
compare the content of Mario Kart 8 Deluxe to Mario Kart DS. But for the time, DS, it felt really ahead of its time. It felt completely content rich, and it still has some elements today that you don't see in the other Mario Karts, like the mission mode, which is exciting. I
Hmm.
do want to mention two things that we didn't touch on that I think are really pivotal in the lore of Mario Kart DS. One is, of course, snaking that we talked about a little bit earlier,
Yep.
but it is a very infamous technique where we talked about the turbos when you drift, and then it goes from blue sparks to red sparks, and then you get a little boost depending on how much you drift. And the way it works in DS, for example, now in Mario Kart 8, you just hold down the button and you drift, and then if you drift long enough, you'll build up the sparks, and then you'll do a bigger boost. But in Mario Kart DS, in order to build up your boost, you need to drift and also go back and forth. Like you need to press left and right on the
Hmm.
D-pad
Mm-hmm.
repeatedly, and then that would quickly build up the turbo boost. So this led to a concept called snaking, where you would do zigzag kind of mini turbos, and
Yeah.
if you did it right, you could even drift on straightaways. So in normally when you're drifting, you have to wait for a turn, and then you take advantage of the turn and drift, and then boost right out of the turn. But with snaking, with this new technique and the way drifts worked in Mario Kart DS, you could kind of game it to where you could go left and right very quickly and then build up boost even on straightaways. And they call it snaking because it looks like you're kind of going back and forth like a snake. And
Mhm.
this was very infamous because it was incredibly vital to use to win, especially online. If you play against CPUs, they don't use this technique. But if you played online, everyone was doing it. And some carts were at a incredible disadvantage, but some were at an amazing advantage. For example, Rob's carts were good, and the aforementioned Dry Bones tank, the Dry Bomber, that was probably the best one. So
Yeah, move over. I'm coming through.
it was like this weird balance where, oh, actually, speed stat is not as important as like handling, for example. So
Mhm.
like the concept of like, okay, if you want to focus on speed, if you want to focus on acceleration, if you want to focus on handling, now in Mario Kart 8, for example, you could really focus on your quote unquote build. Like, oh, I really focus on top speed. If I get hit, my acceleration is really slow, but I'm just not going to get hit. Or if you focus on acceleration, okay, my top speed is not great, but I'm more consistent throughout the course. In DS, you really needed to snake if you wanted to win online. So this was kind of an unfun element about playing online, is because if you weren't good at it, you were just going to get obliterated. Or if you played with your friends, you really needed like a gentleman's agreement. Okay, we're not going to snake, or we're going to really kind of limit the snaking. But it is like a very unique piece of Mario Kart DS lore. And the last part I wanted to mention about Mario Kart DS is the very iconic Japanese commercial called Hot Mario Brothers. Do you guys remember, or have you ever seen the Hot Mario
No,
Brothers Japanese DS commercial?
I don't think I have.
it
If
sounds
if you've
hilarious.
never seen it, you really need to look it up, because Hot Mario Brothers was a marketing campaign in Japan where the comedy group called 99, they were these two young guys, and they played Mario and Luigi in the commercials. And it went on for a few years. Even Double Dash had the commercials with the Hot Mario Brothers. But the most famous one is their DS one. And the DS commercial, there's a few of them, but the best one is, of course, they're showing off the online mode. And so you've got Luigi in Japan, he's playing online. And then it cuts to the other members in the group. There's one guy, he's in Italy and he's speaking Italian, and he's in this very
Mhm.
stereotypical Italian getup. And they cut to America, and he's like dressed up like a biker, and he's speaking English. And they cut to France, and he's speaking French. And it's hard to explain like the comedy of it with so you really need to look it up. But it's a very funny commercial where, oh, they're really highlighting the online play. You can play across the world with the same guy, and he's dressed up in 4 different outfits. He's speaking 4 different languages. It's really, really funny. Definitely look up Mario Kart DS Japanese commercial, and you'll easily find it. So those are the two things we didn't touch on. But otherwise, yeah, Mario Kart DS, a great game. To me, this is really when Mario Kart became a phenomenon. It sold 23 million copies, which is a
It's
lot.
huge.
Uh, Kart and 64, they sold around 8 million, which is still a lot. Super Circuit and Double Dash around 6. So it did feel like Mario Kart was kind of on the back foot for a little bit. Even though, of course, 6 million copies sold is still great, but it felt like, okay, Mario Kart is not what it was at its peak. But then it launched into a whole new stratosphere with Mario Kart DS. It was the third best selling DS game. And then it just built up more and more from there. We outsold DS. 8, of course, blew away DS and even we, even combined.
Yep.
And when you're playing Mario Kart Super Circuit, you're not thinking, okay, eventually Universal Studios is going to have a Mario Kart ride. You're not thinking that at all. But when you're playing DS, you kind of think about, okay, this is getting popular. It's becoming its own franchise, its own cultural. It's become a cultural phenomenon. So this is really the dawn of Mario Kart breaking through for the mainstream for me.
What about
Yeah,
you? Yeah, what about you, Jiggy? What are your final thoughts on it?
I 100% agree because I played Mario Kart on the Super Nintendo at my friend's house. She had one growing up, and we would go over and we played lots of stuff. Super Metroid, Mario Kart, Donkey Kong Country. But honestly, Mario Kart was probably the back burner. That was like the one when we were like couldn't decide what we wanted to play, and we'd play that. And then I got Mario Kart 64, and it was kind of a here and there I'd play it, multiplayer I'd play it. Um, it just none of them ever grabbed me until the DS version. And I'm sure part of that's the online play, but also the simplified controls and understanding the game mechanics. And of course, customizing your emblem, I'm going to keep preaching that out to the choir. I just loved that so much. And thankfully, they took that and they also remade another kart racer on the DS, obviously, Diddy Kong Racing. And they added that feature to that game too. And I also spent a lot of time doing that. I am not an artist, but for some reason, I just absolutely adore that idea. Just giving that little bit of personality to my kart that kind of separates me from other people, because there's something to say about having a little bit of individuality, even in a game like Mario Kart, where everybody plays as Mario, everybody plays as Luigi, everybody plays as Yoshi, you know, but it's like, yeah, but you don't have my specific emblem on your specific, on your specific copy. Like that's me. It gives me this level of personability, and you play online and people see that emblem and they go, oh no, it's that guy, you know, not that they did, but I'm just saying. But yeah, and understanding the game mechanics and just the creativity and using the DS in different ways. It felt right to me. It felt special to me. It's the first Mario Kart that I really, honestly, I played Double Dash. I did enjoy Wii. I did enjoy Wii because I liked flipping over ramps and things. But again, I wouldn't play that by myself, and I wouldn't play Mario Kart 8 by myself. Really, I play that online. DS was the only one that I sat down over the whole history of Mario Kart, playing just about every game in the series. That's the only one I sat down and really played by myself, like dedicating time to it. And I think that says something. And it's also super weird that Wario weighs more than Donkey Kong. That's my final thought.
For myself, I also think it's also super weird that Wario weighs more than Donkey Kong. But no, I think for me, as I've said throughout this entire series, Mario Kart is a game. The Mario Kart series is a series that just passed me by, and it's something I've always wanted to get into. I mentioned it in the Super Circuit episode. I feel like Mario Kart in general is like misplaced nostalgia for me. I'm nostalgic for it, even though I've never really dabbled in it, and I don't. They're not even that like favorite games of mine. But with Mario Kart DS, this was the one that I found myself like consistently playing in preparation for this series. Like all the others I'd play a little bit of and be like, all right, this was cool, and like I got an idea of it. I've played about half to all the tracks, and it always felt like a slog to push myself through it. But DS never felt like that. Like I enjoyed tinkering with everything and exploring all the different options they had, and I really think that what you said, Mona, about how this kind of put Mario Kart on the map, obviously it shows it with sales numbers. I think even just in the way it was made, like what we said at the top of the episode, the two biggest additions, the single player mission, the single player missions and the online multiplayer, those are two huge additions. It's one, it expands multiplayer with the online multiplayer, and it also expands single player with the missions. They literally improved two aspects of the game, the single player side and the multiplayer side, through this game. And I think it shows. I think it shows why this game is so popular, and it's, I don't know, it's the best one I've played so far, and I say that out of I might spoil it now because I already recorded the Mario Kart Wii episode, so I don't think I said it on that episode, but I would say at this point, I would say this is my favorite one that I've played in this series. So I'm really happy I got to explore this, and I honestly kind of want to keep playing it. I might bring it to work on Monday next week and maybe do some more of the missions or play some more races. I don't know, but yeah, that I think that says it. I think that's a good place to wrap up this episode and close it out. Mono, Jiggy, thank you so much for coming on and setting aside some time to talk about Mario Kart DS. And I'm grateful to have you both back on the show. So I want to throw it over to you to give your shout outs. Where can everyone find you online? What would you like to promote? Mono, we'll start off with you. What do you got going on, and where can people find you?
Of course, I'm the host of Tokyo Game Life, a Tokyo-based video game podcast focusing on Nintendo and gaming culture in Japan's capital. Every episode, I feature either a place to visit in Tokyo that's gaming related, or I highlight some element of Japanese gaming culture. often highlighting franchises that are Japan only. And yeah, a lot of great episodes. Josh has been on my podcast several times. So if you want more of Josh, you can find it on Tokyo Game Life. And I have a website, tokyogamelifecom is where you can find it. And I do have a search engine as well. So you can type in, for example, Zelda and find all my Zelda episodes, or Pokemon and find those as well. I've had a lot of great episodes so far this year. I had one about Earthbound pop-up shops that spring up all over
Mm-hmm.
Tokyo. I recently had one about the Gambare Goemon series or the Mystical Ninja series. And I have a lot of great ones coming up as well that I won't spoil, but they're very exciting. So, Tokyo Game Life, if you like Japan, if you like Nintendo, if you like video games, you should like this podcast. So, check it out.
I want to shout out specifically the Game Boy Camera episode with Christopher
Oh,
Graves.
yeah.
That one was so cool to me. I followed him on Instagram. For those who remember, the Game Boy had an add-on, the Game Boy Camera, and you could take pictures with it. Well, this dude's a photographer who specializes in using the Game Boy Camera, and he finds he has like modified it a little bit, so it's not like necessarily just a base Game Boy camera, but for all intents and purposes, he's using a Game Boy camera, and his Instagram feed is nothing but that. It's really, really cool.
Hmm.
I also really enjoyed your episode with Danny from Wars on Pokemon X and Y, because I think I don't know if it was you or him that said it, but I had the exact same experience with Pokemon where I played Gen 1 and then I didn't touch Pokemon again until X and Y, and I really liked X and Y. I really, that, I don't know, those two episodes I really enjoyed, so I just wanted to shout both of those out. So yeah, Tokyo Game Life, y'all, go check it out. Jiggy, over to you. What do you have to promote, and where can the good people find you?
Okay, well, I'm a YouTuber. So Jiggylookback on YouTube, all one word. You look me up, you will find me. The biggest thing I've got to promote right now, I did a highly, highly ambitious video. So I would say it's it's retro gaming, but I do a huge focus on Nintendo 64. Um, and specifically Rareware, classic Rareware on
Mm-hmm.
Nintendo 64, and I just put out a video mapping the entire Rare universe. So I went through Rare's catalog of games and connected all of them via Easter eggs, like anything that had sort of a connection, I would connect it in sometimes multiple ways. And I built out the universe starting from the planet, going into space, going into alternative timelines, even a little bit of parallel Earth stuff at the end. It was highly ambitious. Basically, if you like Nintendo, if you like Rareware, and if you like the meme of Charlie Day from It's Always Sunny, where he's just going crazy on the wall with the different things, like pointing at different things, it's all connected. It's all connected. That's basically what I did. And I'm super excited about it. It's doing pretty well. So definitely go check that out. That's the one I want to highlight for sure. But Jiggylookback, all one word on YouTube. It's great. Great fun.
I definitely recommend Jiggy's channel. I actually watched about half. I was like in the middle of something, so I couldn't finish it. But I watched about half of your mapping the Rare Universe video. And just to clarify, listeners, it's like when he says mapping, it's like he's picturing where the different, like where DK Island is in conjunction with the island from like Diddy Kong Racing and the area from Diddy Kong Racing and stuff. Like it's creating a world map using locations from the Rare universe, and I can't wait to finish watching it to see how this goes into space and alternate timelines. Also want to shout out the video that you posted a couple days prior to that, the Defending Donkey Kong 64, because
Oh yeah.
I'm going to be writing something about something similar along those lines. Jiggy and I actually spoke off mic a week or two ago about the same thing. And dude, that video is doing crazy numbers too. Like it's a great
Yeah.
video. I watched that whole thing. I really enjoyed it.
We're just under 23,000, I think.
Something like that.
So
It's
yeah,
doing
and
really
it
well.
hasn't even been out a week. So my channel's really starting to take off, and I'm happy about that. I work really hard on it, so it's cool.
You do good work, my friend. I've seen a bunch of your videos and you put a lot of work into them. So, but yeah, everyone go check out Jiggylookback on YouTube. As for myself, as usual, you can follow me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram at StillLoadingPod, Blue Sky, Threads, Twitch at StillLoadingPod on all of them, at StillLoading Podcast on YouTube, which is pretty much just audio of the show. It's just literally just a still image of the thumbnail and the episodes. That's pretty much it. So, but it's over there at Still Loading Podcast on YouTube. If you want to support the show, please consider giving a 5-star rating or review on Apple Podcasts or whichever podcasting app you use. It really helps more people find the show. It makes me feel warm and fuzzy. And I like feeling warm and fuzzy. Who doesn't?
Come on, let them feel warm and fuzzy, people.
I just
Come
need
on.
some fuzz, God damn it! But no, it really it's something. It just takes a few moments of your time, and it really helps. It really helps small shows like myself out. If you want to support monetarily, there is a patreon.com/stillloadingpod. For $1 a month, you'll get all the episodes a little bit earlier with better audio quality, as well as access to patron voting rights, where I do quarterly polls and also a big one at the beginning of each year for a backlog month, which I keep explaining it, but I'm not going to explain it again here. But long story short, you can help guide the direction of the show and pick future games for me to cover. By the time this episode comes out, actually, the next one that was already chosen, and I've already finished the game and I got to record the episode, is Zillion for the Sega Master System. That'll actually be out in a few weeks. So there's going to be another poll, so you can get on that and help guide the direction of the show. For $3 a month, you'll get everything I mentioned before at the $1 tier, plus you get your name read at the beginning of the show, like you heard those wonderful patrons at the beginning of this episode. For $4 a month, you'll get everything I mentioned prior, the shout outs, the early access, the voting rights, plus access to 2 mini bonus episodes every month. They're bunch of unique and goofy ideas that you can go check it out. Retro magazine reviews and music retrospectives and all that other stuff. And then for $5 a month, you'll get everything I mentioned prior, plus access to Still Bonding, which is my monthly James Bond podcast where me and a bunch of friends bond over 007. By the time this episode comes out, I want to say The World Is Not Enough has either just come out or will come. I think it would have just come out. And we're getting close to the end of the Pierce Brosnan era, and we're going to move on to Daniel Craig. And then after that, I'll pick a new movie series. It's going to be, instead of Still Bonding, it might be Still Family to cover all the Fast and Furious movies. Who knows?
I like that. Still Family.
I got a whole bit ready for it. So, but yeah, that's patreon.com/stillloadingpod. A whole bunch of goodies over there. I don't know if these long-winded things are even good, but there's a lot of stuff for you to check out. So there's a lot of content for your hard-earned money, so go check it out. But yeah, that's it. That's all I got for y'all today on this episode of Still Loading. We're almost at the end of Mario month. I hope you all have been joining Mario Mania in general, episode 300 now. So thank you all once again for joining me. Mono, Jiggy, thank you for stopping by.
Thanks for having me.
Ooh, and ditto, Jinx.
You both owe me a soda instead. No. But with all that said, listeners, thank you all for listening, and I will see you all next time.